Drugémon, The Long Road to Recovery, Chapter 8. The long road back 1 month had passed. In the grimy, industrial port of Vermilion City, the air tasted of salt, rust, and diesel. Ash, looking leaner and hardened by a month of manual labor, hauled heavy nets onto the deck of a fishing trawler. The work was grueling, mindless, and exactly what he needed. It gave him a purpose, however hollow, a way to mark the time until the 30 days were up. He paused, his hands raw and aching, and looked out at the sea, his gaze fixed on the horizon in the direction of Cinnabar Island. The blackout period was over. Every morning for the past week he had spent his shore leave at the port's only public terminal, waiting for a message, a single word from the Serenity Center. An old, grizzled fisherman he worked with clapped a heavy hand on his shoulder. Waiting on news, kid. Ash just nodded, his expression tight with a painful mixture of hope and dread. In his mind he pictured a clean, healthy Pikachu, its fur sleek and its eyes bright. He imagined it running to him, leaping into his arms, the bond between them reforged and stronger than ever. This hope was the only thing that had kept him going, the single, flickering flame in the darkness of his solitude. The reality was horrifyingly different. On Route 11, miles away, a creature that was and was not Pikachu hunted in the tall grass. It was gaunt, its fur matted with filth and grime. Its eyes, once so bright and expressive, were now wide with a frantic, desperate paranoia, the eyes of a cornered animal that has forgotten it was ever anything else. It had spent the last month on a desperate, terrifying journey back to the mainland, a stowaway on cargo ships, a scavenger of scraps from overflowing bins. But it was not just surviving, it was hunting. It was looking for a fix, the memory of the crystal's power, the surge of energy, the feeling of invincibility, that was the only thing driving it now. Its escape from the prison of the Serenity Center had led it into the larger, more dangerous prison of its own addiction, a cage with no walls and no escape. It saw a group of trainers ahead, their laughter loud and careless. Hiding in the grass, it watched them, its body tense. One of them had a small, locked box, similar to the one Ash used to carry, the one that had held the glittering poison. Pikachu's pupils dilated. A low growl rumbled in its chest. It needed to know what was inside. It had forgotten what it was to be a partner. It had become a predator. Ash stood in the dim, flickering light of the Vermilion port terminal, his heart pounding against his ribs. He was logged into the Serenity Center's patient portal. A new message. It was here. His hand trembled as he moved the cursor and opened it. The message was cold, clinical, and utterly devastating. It detailed, in brief, formal language, the events of 30 days prior. A patient refused treatment. Subsequent escape resulted in significant destruction of facility property and the assault of a staff member, Blastoise, guard. Case closed. Ash read it once, then twice. The words swam before his eyes, refusing to make sense. The hope that had been his anchor, his reason for getting up in the morning, shattered into a million pieces. He stumbled back from the terminal, a strangled cry escaping his lips. Pikachu wasn't safe. It wasn't recovering. It was out there, somewhere in the cold, unforgiving world, and had been for a month. He thought he was saving his friend, but he had only managed to abandon him to a fate worse than any he could have imagined. The guilt was a physical weight, crushing the air from his lungs. He turned and ran from the terminal, his mind reeling. The clinical words of the message burned into his brain. As dusk fell, casting long, sorrowful shadows over the city, Ash found himself in a desperate, frantic search. He ran through the grimy streets and alleyways of Vermilion, asking anyone he could find, dockworkers, street vendors, loitering thugs, if they had seen a stray Pikachu. He was met with shrugs, hostile glares, and warnings to get lost. In a city full of desperate people, he was just one more voice crying in the wilderness. Then he heard it, a commotion from a nearby alley, angry shouts. And beneath them, a familiar high-pitched shriek, a sound that was not one of pain, but of pure, unadulterated rage. Ash's blood ran cold. He ran towards the sound, his heart hammering in his chest. He found a group of street thugs cornering a small, feral-looking Pikachu. It was his Pikachu, but it was also not. This creature was snarling, its fur raised, its body coiled like a viper. It was launching weak but vicious sparks at the men, who were laughing at its pathetic attempts to fight back. One of the thugs, tiring of the game, drew back his foot and kicked the small creature, sending it tumbling through the dirt and grime of the alley. "Stupid rat," the thug yelled. "Give us the box." Pikachu, bruised and battered, was protectively clutching a small metal box it had stolen from the trainers on the road. It believed, with every fiber of its being, that a fix was inside. It was willing to die for it, get away from him. The roar that erupted from Ash's throat was primal, fueled by a month of grief, guilt, and soul-crushing despair. He charged into the alley, a whirlwind of desperate fury. He tackled the thug who had kicked Pikachu, his fists flying, his mind a red haze of protective rage. The thugs, not expecting such a ferocious attack from this haggard-looking dockworker, were taken completely by surprise. They grabbed the box and fled, melting back into the shadows of the city, leaving Ash and Pikachu alone in the sudden, ringing silence of the alley. Ash, his knuckles bleeding and his breathing ragged, slowly approached the small, trembling form. Pikachu was bruised and panting, still in a defensive crouch. It looked at Ash, but there was no recognition in its eyes. Only fear and a deep, burning hostility. It saw not a friend, not a partner, but a threat. Pikachu. Ash's voice was soft, breaking with the weight of his shattered heart. "It's me. I'm here." He reached out a hand, a gesture that had once been met with a welcoming nuzzle. Now Pikachu flinched back, hissing, and let out a weak, defensive spark that fizzled harmlessly against Ash's fingertips. It didn't hurt, but the rejection was an agony beyond words. In Pikachu's warped, paranoid mind, Ash was the man who had abandoned it, the one who had locked it away in that white, silent prison. It let out a pained, mournful cry and scurried away, a flash of yellow disappearing into the deepening shadows of the city. Ash didn't follow. He sank to his knees, his fist hitting the grimy pavement in a gesture of utter defeat. He had found his friend, only to realize that he had well and truly lost him. The bond they had shared, a bond forged over years of adventure and companionship, was broken. At dawn, Ash sat on the edge of a pier, watching the sun rise over the polluted water. He looked broken, a hollowed out shell of the man he had been. The old fisherman sat down next to him, holding out a steaming mug of coffee. "The bad news?" he asked gently. "The worst," Ash said, his voice numb. He explained everything, the escape, the feral state of his friend, the broken bond, the look of hatred in Pikachu's eyes. The fisherman listened patiently before asking the crucial question. "So what now, kid? You gonna let him go? Let the streets take him?" Ash looked down at his raw, calloused hands. He remembered the feeling of Pikachu's weak, defensive spark against his skin. He remembered the fear and hatred in its eyes. He thought about the Serenity Center's words, a codependent cycle. He realized, with a sudden, painful clarity, that he couldn't force Pikachu to get better. He couldn't drag him back to a place he saw as a prison. The only thing he could do was be there, to follow, to watch over him, to protect him from the worst of the world, and from himself, even if he was hated for it. A new resolve hardened in his eyes. It was not the bright-eyed, optimistic determination of his youth, but a grim, stubborn, and unconditional loyalty. "No," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I'm not letting him go. He doesn't trust me. He might never trust me again, but I'm not giving up on him. I'll follow him. I'll keep him safe, whatever it takes." He stood up, leaving the untouched coffee on the pier. The journey to the Serenity Center was over. A new, longer, and infinitely more painful journey was just beginning, the long road back. He didn't know where it would lead or if it could ever succeed, but he knew he had to try. He walked away from the docks and back into the city, a solitary, determined figure against the rising sun. He was no longer just a trainer. He was a guardian, a silent protector for his lost and broken friend.